Do you have a favorite candy color? Have you ever wondered what dyes are used to make that particular color, though?
Yellow. That's my favorite candy color.
Is it really?
Joining us now is
Red.
Karen Rubin,
Red.
Executive Director at the Amelia Park Children's Museum in Westfield, with more on the science behind candy color coding.
Oh, thank you. And we call this chromatography.
Chromatography.
So it is the science behind solutions and the differences of how solutions work. So the first experiment I have is just regular markers, brown, black, yellow, purple, and green.
And what are they being placed in?
In water. So you can use a paper towel or a coffee filter, holding it over a stick. You draw a line on the bottom. And the interesting thing is, when you look at the black, you notice that it's not just black colors.
It's like there's some blue.
Blues.
And it's almost like there's a gray scale, too, as it goes up.
Yeah.
Is that because the color is diminishing?
Well, the colors, the water is wicking the color up. So some colors will settle at the bottom, but then darker colors will move up, like the blues and the reds.
That's so interesting.
And this one, I think, is really interesting because you can see the blues and the yellow, which makes green. So it takes the color, brings it up, and eventually some colors will settle just because of the different types of solutions they are. And this one's going over the other edge, and then the brown.
Now, does this vary on the marker type, or is it color specific that each thing has its own properties?
You can test all different kinds of markers. You can test Sharpies, washable markers, Crayola markers, different types of markers, and you'll see that all the colors have other colors in them.
So that's really, really interesting. Now over here, this doesn't even look like a science experiment. It looks like an art project.
Or Ashley's lunch.
So then we have the same thing over here.
Okay.
But what I did was I took the color green from Skittles and Spree, M&M, and Jawbreakers. And as the water wicks up, we just started this, we'll see colors being pulled. And the different solutions, some are darker. So the Spree is very, very light. But as you can see, the Skittles is a much darker green. And when we look over here, we can see that the Skittles have a higher concentration of dye than the Spree do.
Absolutely, you can definitely see the difference.
So that really sells candy. And then the Jawbreakers has the most concentration. And the interesting thing is they don't quite mix, they just kind of quite touch each other.
Now why is that? Why don't they
Because they're different densities.
Okay.
So the yellow might have a different amount of sugar than the red and the green and the blue and whatever color it is.
Now, none of this impacts the taste, and obviously it must be safe, even though looking at this now, watching everything melt out and knowing that that's happening in my stomach, I don't know how I feel about that.
They are food-safe dyes. Some parents think, well, they rather give their kids chocolate M&Ms because that's a chocolate coating. But the brown actually has all the colors of the rainbow. It has the yellow, the orange, the red, and the blue.
So it's maybe actually the worst one if you're thinking of it that way.
Coating.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can try this at home. All you need is, a piece of paper towel. You fold it over either a coffee stirrer or a popsicle stick. And, take some dye from your candy and you rub it on. And then dip it in, you have to rub it on. Dip it in a glass or a mason jar because now it's canning season.
Right.
And you can watch what happens, and it's a really fun science experiment.
So let's go through the actual science behind the candy again. There's whatever candy it is in the middle, then there's a layer of dye.
Yes.
And then sometimes it seems to me that there's like a little waxy layer in a lot of these more inexpensive candies.
They use a coating to keep the dye on better. So, and if we take some, I'm gonna try some Spree. You can stick it on. You can see how fast that yellow spreads out throughout. Let's see what happens with the green.
Pretty concentrated dose of color.
Yeah, and they all work at different speeds. So some will go slower. Some will go faster and some will go slower. This has less sugar, but let's see what happens with the gobstopper because it's the most concentrated. If it goes slower, it's a little slower. This one was definitely much quicker.
That just sped through.
Wow.
Yes, because the more sugar and the more additives you have to it, it will slow down the process.
Now, what about the letters on the M&Ms and the Skittles?
So
what are
we
those
have
made of?
two bowls. They are an ink that you can eat, but what they do is they put the candy color first, and then they place the letter on top. So if you put them in a bowl, they actually float off of the M&Ms. So we have an M here, and we have some S's floating around.
It's like alphabet soup over
now,
here.
earlier today, and we can take a look at it right now, we have some time-lapse video of what we did and kind of watching them come out, and this is it right here. And as we can see, it's kind of a a quick process. It takes what, maybe 15, 20 minutes
Yep.
for it to be fully done? And it kind of floated up. So there's so many layers in what you're eating. You have to dig deep to get to the candy part.
Exactly.
And then the letter floats right up. That is so cool. Now, what
Yes.
temperature should the water be if people want to try this at home with their kids? Have
Well,
some
you
fun?
can do 2 temperatures. I would do a cold and a hot and time them
Okay.
and see which one is going to release first.
And you can actually pick up the M.
Yes.
This is someone holding the letter on their finger.
No
Huh.
way.
Who knew? I mean,
have-
I knew candy was fun to eat, but I didn't know it was this much fun to play with, too.
I have the M on my finger.
Oh, you do?
I'm part of an M&M.
I'm going to try the S.
Here, grab an S, Ash.
I did it.
Did you get it?
I got it.
That's
Look
so
at
Pretty
that.
cool.
That's awesome. Well, Karen, you
Thank you
always
so
make
much.
science fun, no matter what we do. It's always so much fun to be with you.
Well,
Thanks a bunch,
fast and
Karen.
easy, fun things to do, and
People can always come down to the museum, too, to have even more fun with science.
yes, and we have our free Fun Friday coming up at the end of July, so check our website.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Karen.
So once again, for even more fun with food, head to our website, mymassappeal.com, later today.